Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, said he and other officials tried to convince Ukraine to dig up dirt on Trump's political rival because they were acting on the president's orders. Sondland, a longtime Republican, got his diplomatic posting shortly after he gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration. But at the hearing today, loyalty was not on display. Paul Hunter was in the room when Sondland testified, and he tells us why it cuts so deep.
With all eyes and cameras trained right at him, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union and star witness Gordon Sondland walked in, sat down, and right off the bat asked the big question out loud for all to hear.
Was there a quid pro quo?
Was it the case that Donald Trump had wanted a favor for a favor from Ukrainian President Zelensky, an official U.S. favor in return for helping Trump politically?
The answer is yes.
In nearly 6 hours of, at times, riveting testimony, Sondland said he believed he was acting on Trump's orders in helping pressure Ukraine into, among other things, announcing an investigation that could bring up dirt on Trump rival Joe Biden. Said Sondland, the orders were indirect. They all came through Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. As Trump himself put it, said Sondland, talk to Rudy.
We all understood that if we refused to work with Mr. Giuliani, we would lose a very important opportunity to cement relations between the United States and Ukraine. So we followed the president's orders.
The early leverage included dangling a Trump-Zelensky phone call and an official visit to the White House, something Zelensky very much wanted as a signal the U.S. had Ukraine's back.
We all understood that these prerequisites for the White House call and the White House meeting reflected President Trump's desires and requirements.
Later, Sondland learned the White House was also withholding military aid.
I was under the impression that absolutely it was contingent.
And, said Sondland, senior Trump insiders knew pretty much everything, including at different times the vice president, the secretary of state, and the White House acting chief of staff.
Everyone was in the loop. It was no secret.
So, Paul, I'm curious about something. At one point, Sondland was asked, are you a friend of Trump's? And he said no. It seemed odd because they have history. What was happening there?
Yeah, well, think about it. As you noted off the top, Sondland's a lifelong Republican. He's a big-time Trump donor. It was Trump who appointed Sondland to be ambassador of the EU, and yet here he was. You can imagine Sondland having to think long and hard about what he was going to say and how he was going to say it, but say it he did. He named names. He named Donald Trump, if indirectly. Yes, he noted he's got memory issues. He's not a note taker. He gets things wrong sometimes. But on the key point today, he was explicit. He believes he was acting on orders of the president in helping Ukraine carry out Donald Trump's complicated bidding. He was explicit on that. And you can imagine that's why Democrats tonight are saying this was a pretty big deal.
All right, more to come. Thanks, Paul. So Democrats insist Sondland's testimony advances the case for impeachment, but no surprise, Republicans have their own take. Susan Ormiston shows us how they are spinning it all as harmless, starting with the president himself.
Ready with his take, President Trump had but one headline for his audience.
You have the cameras rolling? I want nothing. That's what I want from Ukraine. That's what I said. I want nothing. I said it twice.
With bold notes, Trump restated what he told Gordon Sondland on the phone, repeating it 6 times here in a minute.
Now, if you weren't fake news, you'd cover it properly. I say to the ambassador in response, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo.
That is what Sondland testified, except he said a lot more, that he understood explicitly President Trump did want something, investigations, but used Rudy Giuliani as a foil, and that the president's top men were in the loop. By noon, even Fox News concluded that Trump had a Gordon problem.
To a certain degree, he took out the bus and he ran over President Trump, Vice President Pence, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Rudy Giuliani, Mick Mulvaney.
Sondland said he kept U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo informed at every stage and was told that Giuliani was the gatekeeper for Ukraine. In Brussels for NATO meetings, Pompeo sidestepped.
I didn't see a single thing that I was working. Sounds like you might not have been. I was in meetings all day and haven't had a chance to see any of that testimony.
Sondland has twice refreshed what he remembered in his testimony. Republicans characterized him as a businessman turned diplomat who is now trying to protect himself. President Trump, touring an Apple plant in Texas, had his own conclusions.
Not only did we win today, it's over.
It's not, but a Gallup poll out today showed the president's approval rating ticking back up 2 points to 43%, the same as in mid-September before a whistleblower or any impeachment inquiry. And that has to be worrying Democrats, hoping that testimony like today changes minds. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
So here's what's next. Tomorrow, 2 witnesses will speak in public after reportedly making big revelations behind closed doors. David Holmes is a State Department official who told investigators he heard Sondland speak on the phone with Trump about pushing Ukraine to investigate Democrats, and that he heard both sides because Trump spoke so loudly. Fiona Hill, a former White House advisor on Russia, shed light on earlier stages of the alleged pressure campaign. CBC News Network will have live coverage starting at 9 a.m. Eastern.